You know, I was setting up for this video and I was getting Paramount Plus up on the monitor, just Prodigy, and I was looking, I was like, oh, Avatar, The Last Airbender's on Paramount Plus, that's interesting, and I clicked on it, and I'm getting prompts to set up parental controls, so this is fun.
This video is not made for kids. It's designed to be suitable for all audiences, but quite frankly, the FTC scares me. So this video is an adult's perspective on Prodigy and a review from that perspective and for other adults and parents, but not necessarily parents. Hello and welcome back to the I keep trying to do that old intro. This is not a world domination society. The FTC is not gonna like that. Yes, welcome to Prodigy. Why, you may ask, am I a 20-year-old non-binary YouTuber covering a kid's show? Well, why are you here? If you're asking that question. One, this is on StarTrek. And two, kid shows have been amazing these past few years, quite frankly. I've talked about this a lot on other Prodigy videos. I look like I'm peeking. I swear I set this mic up good. But in brief, this is a show that they've been very clear that they are not talking down to their kids' audience. They are making it not accessible, but interesting to everybody. And those have been the best kind of shows. Steven Universe is my favorite show. My other favorite show is Deep Space Nine. And this show has the potential to be Steven Universe, but Star Trek. So it's the combination of my two favorite shows, so yes, I'm interested. Shall we begin? Man, am I so glad Prodigy is good. I don't know how long this video will be, because, you know, unlike Lower Decks where I could do those frame-by-frame analysis, with Prodigy it's kind of be like, yep, that's some new stuff, but I enjoyed it. Obviously, first episode of any series is gonna be generally not as interesting as the other ones, because you gotta set up the situation, you know, you have to get all the people on the ship and off a planet. That's your first episode. In fact, for Prodigy, I think very wisely, they made that their first 2 episodes. According to Memory Alpha at least, this is listed as episode 1 and 2 combined. So there's really only 9 episodes of Prodigy, with this being a double episode. But no, I think that was an incredibly well executed first episode. I was engaged. It got everyone, of course, together where they needed to be in a sensible manner. None of it felt weird. But I think importantly as well, as the kids show, let's introduce kids to Federation and Starfleet values, even with essentially no Starfleet in this episode, I think they did great. And they did great in the best way to do it, which is naturally and almost stealthily introducing the topics. The two that come to mind specifically are Rock Talk. They had a general theme of not judging a book by its cover. Like, Rock Talk looks like a big, scary rock person, and then actually they're just a little 8-year-old girl, which there was a vaguely similar thing with the Medusan, Zero. Yeah, because they're introduced as Prisoner Zero. No, that's the Doctor Who episode I just watched. Escapee Zero? I can't remember what they called him, but basically Prisoner Zero. But actually, Prisoner Zero turns out to be the good guy. You know, it's don't judge a book by its cover again. And then, furthermore, it was just the natural introduction of, I'm not a boy, I'm not a girl, I mean, a gaseous, non-corporeal entity, but, you know, it's the idea as a little kid, just having that sort of exposure. There's things that don't quite match what they look like, and are neither he nor her, is brilliant, and of course, very Starfleet. There were a few oddities as I watched, just like, for example, I almost said Nog, that's not his name, Dal. You're gonna have to get used to that, me not knowing people's names. Dal just kind of knew that Tellarites were argumentative in a world without translators. So, like, it suggests they've been in contact with Tellarites, which is a bit weird 3 years after Lower Decks. I mean, it's weird that there's a Tellarite in the Delta Quadrant anyway, but, you know, we'll gloss over that until we maybe hear why. I'm almost concerned that maybe there isn't a Y. There's just like, yeah, it's a Tellarite. Because, of course, the only Alpha Quadrant species that should be in the Delta Quadrant are Borg or Voyager crew, and the Voyager crew aren't there anymore. They also did the classic, I think kid shows are the worst at this, where they had language, I mean, this has been a problem in all of Star Trek, but they had weird language puns that only work in English, like cat boots, which, you know, it was kind of weird. They called it standard, the sort of language we hear is English. And, like, I guess, like, yeah, sure, okay, there's a standard that's just, you know, Mine standard, Delta standard, whatever. But then it was like cat boots, and I'm like, man, that's a misinterpretation that works in both of these alien languages that should have had no contact with Earth whatsoever. But really, it was just those little minor gripes like that, barely gripes. As I said, I was engaged, I was enjoying myself. It was quite entertaining. There were a lot of like little jokes, sort of one-liners that I liked, you know, made me laugh. Yeah, I mean, it kept me captivated. It kept me interested. I want to see more. I was disappointed when it ended. Not because of the ending, because I wanted more. And ultimately, that's what I want from the shows. So I have very high hopes that once this show gets going, you know, now that it's set all the pieces in play, maybe it needs a season to like really find its legs, but it could be a very, very strong show and a personal favorite of mine if they get a chance. I mean, it's definitely on that shows to show the kids, you know, once I have some. But it was on par with those early Steven Universe episodes, and I've seen what Steven Universe becomes. I still have one, I'm not sure if it's a complaint or not, but for a lot of it, it didn't really... I mean, I very comfortably felt like I was slipping into the show and the universe, and it can accept it as Trek. I'm not saying this isn't Star Trek, but there's a lot just because all the aliens are new, the settings are new, the art style, CGI is new. Before the introduction of the ship, and it wasn't really getting the Star Trek vibes, which is fine in its own, but I mean, TNG won't feel like Star Trek if you're coming off of TOS. Like, it's a new setting. But there were almost times where I got Star Wars specifically vibes in some other shows. Like I have General Grievous vibes from main robot antagonist. I'm autistic. This is going to happen the whole season. But at the same time, we're in the Delta Quadrant. I mean, presumably the middle of the Delta Quadrant, like nowhere near any other aliens we know. So, you know, of course it's going to be different. They're all going to be humanoid, or at least mostly humanoid, because that's Star Trek canon, you know, all the precursor race, yada yada. And if you're not familiar with that, there is a Star Trek canonical reason that not only most aliens are humanoid, but must be humanoid. And I think it's good. I would actually complain more if we did see a lot of alpha, beta, quadrant species. Any species we know that is not a delta quadrant species like the Kazon, I would complain a lot more about. I'll let your Medusan, because of course their whole thing was navigation. They could travel everywhere. I think the first Medusan we see in TOS does like intergalactic spaces or something crazy like that. And I'll let, you know, the Tellarite sit until I kind of hear, why is there a Tellarite? How did they get here? But I felt they were pushing that alien and different. They definitely kept it similar enough to the Star Trek ethos. Probably largely because they were all humanoid. I don't think there was a single non-humanoid alien, besides Murph, in the entire episode. Yeah, you know, I think they've done a good job. I think it's just I now have to slip into this essentially new generation of look. But the ship definitely helps, even though it's maybe not as Starfleet as some other things. It's definitely clearly Starfleet in its general layout, but the LCARs, we have an LCAR system, which is new, but very much LCARs. There were constant Voyager sounds, which I loved, little beeps, the shields, all sorts of things, which I love that after so many years, having seen the 24th century stuff, I can still go, that's a Voyager sound, you know, specifically a Voyager sound, not a TNG sound, not a Deep Space Nine sound, that's a Voyager sound. And of course, it's great seeing Janeway back. It's a little weird. I mean, I'll get used to it, but hearing, yeah, I thought I was off, hearing 66-year-old Captain Janeway coming out of probably 20, 30 something year old Janeway is a hologram. And it almost makes me wonder, in universe, like, all right, Admiral Janeway, we want you to sit down and we're gonna make you the new training hologram for Starfleet, right? And like, oh great, that sounds cool, my legacy and stuff. But, right, you gotta look like how you looked when you were 30. And she's like, I mean, okay, I'm kind of an admiral now. People know, when they think of me like this. No, trust me, you gotta look 30 something. I can't remember what it's called, but there's even a I don't know what you'd call it, not a logical fallacy, but when thinking of historical figures, we tend to think of them how they looked as old, usually old men, like Charles Darwin, Einstein. Just think of famous old people, and it's like a really old man, but, for most of their time, they didn't look like an old man, because, that was like the end of their life. That's what the most recent series pictures are. Like, for most of their life, they were like, a relatively young person. And so this is almost an anti-effect of like, no, Janeway, trust me, you gotta look like you're 30, even though you're a very famous, like, older admiral right now. But no, I won't complain too much about that. It's just more of the weird in-universe thing of like, why would you do that? But really, yeah, after this main 45-minute segment, it's definitely met the minimum expectations. But I think this was a perfectly executed first episode. It's made me want more. It's made me excited for what they're going to continue. And it's given me high hopes for what they can do, the messages they can spread. Not just because, adults, as I said in the beginning, I'm assuming we're all adults here. We're Star Trek fans. We like seeing those role models and those utopian ideals in our own right, those like TNG style. But especially as kids, when I sit down, my 4 or 5-year-old in front of the TV so they can watch Prodigy, I'm confident that they'll be passively absorbing a lot of good values, a lot of those Federation, Starfleet values and morals that are really important. Like I mentioned at the beginning, sure, there'll be some active episodes that directly address that stuff, which is great, but also the passive stuff, like even this episode, some of the genderless stuff, or the don't judge a book by its cover, that'll just naturally become a part of how they think and how they expose, similar to, again, Steven Universe. If you haven't seen Steven Universe, I'm probably going to reference it a lot when talking about Prodigy. Or, other of those kids shows that are famous for the values, So yeah, well done, Prodigy team. I'm excited to see what you come up with next. And now we're going to do a bit of a scene-by-scene analysis. Probably not as long as Lower Decks, because again, it's all fresh and new, and I don't have too much to talk about, but we'll see what refreshes my memory. Just need to get the thumbnail. I will say, I'm not sure if it's just me, the art style, it felt at times like they might have been running some sort of non-standard frame rate. It might also have been Paramount Plus. There are a few bits where I think the audio went a little bit weird, but it wasn't lagging, but it wasn't a standard frame rate I'm used to, and I know for a lot of things that could be kind of off-putting. It was weighted more towards the beginning of the episode, but in general, I really love the art style, the way things look, and I've adjusted to any of those weird little problems that might originally be there. Into the Spider-Verse is probably the biggest example. I haven't seen it. They have a very non-standard frame rate, if I'm right about it, but is that just me? I don't know. Let me know what you thought. This was actually another instance of holographic controls where I didn't actually hate and despise the holographic controls. Or just the concept of them, because I am very against holographic control. See this picture right here? When most things, especially live action, do holographic controls, they go, wouldn't it be great if this was 50% opaque and you could actually see the back of my desk behind this monitor? No, of course not. That is dumb beyond measure. And I'm not quite sure. There are applications where semi-transparent holographic controls would be great. Actually, I'll give you one. Discovery. When they do the medical scans, it's like a holographic, transparent thing that shows the inside of a person. That's great. You know, the Breath of the Wild the video game has 3D maps that are great. Not the most readable, but actually, like, in front of you, they would have been better. But for whatever reason, the Protostar as well, I think it's maybe the coloring, the contrast, and again, if you actually look at this map, it is opaque. It's not transparent. In fact, anywhere that there's actually something being projected, it's not transparent. It's opaque. So I am really happy to see someone understanding what is, for some reason, an incredibly difficult concept, that people don't want their screens to be transparent. And so I'm not going to be angry watching them try and use everything. And of course, you got the touchpaddy LCARs, which is nice. But I'm not going to be furious watching them use holographic controls. Speaking of Alpha Squadron species, I'm not sure if I want to call this a Katarian, I believe it's pronounced. Like, especially the little pigtail things they have. I don't think... I mean, that's just hair. But I'm also willing to say this is another creature that looks like a cat alien that just lives in the Delta Quadrant, because for some reason Star Trek is terrified of dog-based aliens. Legitimately, though, there are so many vaguely cat things in Star Trek, and there are dogs in Star Trek, but there's no dog alien. Like, you made a cat alien. That's a bit weird. I also liked, it's just one of those little canon things. I don't think they ever said what they were mining. They definitely never said they were mining dilithium, but as someone who knows the universe, I can kind of look at it and feel like, yeah, they're mining dilithium. And especially with the context clues. And it's the same thing I loved about the Next Generations and the 24th century broadly, but specifically the Next Generation did this great with their technology, where, like, you could actually understand what the different fake technology parts did, kind of, and how they interacted because of the way they described them in a consistent manner. And so they kind of went, all right, what's, you know, broadly dilithium? It's like pink, crystally, valuable, you know, you mine it. Well, that stuff is on the screen right there. It makes you feel immersed in a world, that there is a world, that it's kind of detailed and happening, and that you know about it. I mean, making yourself feel clever is always fun, you know? I also like to appreciate when they're on the ship, you're constantly hearing the Voyager, like, I don't know, the something wrong has happened noise, like a door is locked, you've hit the wrong button, this process didn't work. You know that the beep beep, that's a bad rendition, but you know the noise. It's a great joke. With the other series, where the one I see it a lot is there's a pic of Riker leaning back, talking to Worf, and he's leaning on, like, that wooden arch thing, and it's like, you know, Riker, you're just, like, sitting on all these buttons and all the weapons and stuff. You're gonna, like, fire some photon torpedoes or, like, a phaser with your butt. Just, like, how does the screen know? Like, how often does this happen? Just sitting on the touchscreens. And there's always the fun fan recognitions, like, no, the screens can recognize your butt. It's got, like, Riker butt recognition. But this is like, not, you know, they're sitting on buttons all the time because they don't know what they're doing. And the ship is just like, look, I don't know what you're trying to do. It isn't working. And it was just a fun little detail. Yeah, I told you that would be fast. There's 45 minutes. But yeah, the other thing as well is I think they did a great job of very naturally introducing their characters, putting them in their roles, kind of explaining without explaining what they are. I'm going orange. I swear this camera refuses to acknowledge white sometimes. My camera goes orange whenever there's purple on the screen. That is not a good sign for Prodigy. But anyway, yeah, they did a great job introducing the characters to their roles, what they were, their personality types, very naturally. It's the famous show don't tell. And so, yeah, technically, it was a great episode. It kept me captivated. I want more, and I'm excited to see what they're gonna do in the future next week. Thanks for watching. That's it for today. Before you go, you're clearly into kid shows, and you sat through this long enough that you like me, so right up there's a little iCard you might want to check out. And actually, maybe on this end screen, I don't know. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. What do I normally say at the end of these? I don't know. Bye. Subscribe, like, bye. Look, I had a week off, and I'm just completely derailed.